you came up with this idea for this.
For the Gaza piece?
Yeah, for the Gaza piece.
It was from a friend's Facebook status. The Palestinian poet through Arizona, and she had made a post on Facebook, and I don't remember the exact post, but it was something to the fact, just talking about the people of Gaza and Palestine and the culture and the history and the art, and it was like if people had been to Palestine to like post something about their trip or the people. And so I was trying to create something that was like life affirming. And so I took the Robert Indiana love piece, and just made it into Gaza. And I call it Gaza Love. And it is interesting, when I made it, I could have swore, I was like, somebody's already done this. So I Googled it, make sure that it was not already out there, that I hadn't seen it somewhere else, because it just made so much sense. And then, me and Sam, we printed a bunch, and then we did an action. Some organizations they did a counter demonstration to the city council, New York City Council, when they came out right at the beginning of Israel bombing Gaza. They came out and did a press conference at City Hall, talking about their, basically showing their support to Israel. And so, what organization was that did that action?
I think it's Alauda.
Alauda? Yeah.
I think so.
And so we just showed up and like used our posters to like add voice to that, and people were into it, and the photos looked great, and we just kept screen printing and going to all the demos and giving posters out to people. It's a good way to talk to a lot of people when you're at a rally, so you're not just kind of feeling like you're one person. It really does help you connect to people. That was kind of how this piece came about, and then it just kind of took over, kind of created a life of its own on the internet. Had activists in London and in Houston and San Francisco reaching out for posters. And so, there's a couple websites where people posting artwork that was in support of BDS. And so I made a high-res image that people could then download and print their own posters. Sometimes it could be somebody's first time at a demo or a rally. And I've done this before with other projects where I screen printed stuff and then take them down to DC and just give them out to people. And you spend the whole day talking to 500,000 people just asking you, what your poster's about, why you're here, then they tell you why they're there, and then you connect with so many people, and you don't feel like you're just one person. You're like, oh, I'm part of this movement, part of a larger voice. And then I think sometimes if you're, it could be somebody's first time at a rally, they don't show up with a sign. So all of a sudden you give them a piece of art, a sign, then they look around, they see other people with that same sign, then they start connecting with those people, and then all of a sudden, we've seen people come back where we could tell things have changed in the course of printing, and so we've seen people, following week at a demo that has posters that we printed from like a week ago, and they have it back, so people are recycling them or bringing them back and using them, and so yeah, definitely, and I think the positiveness of the image, that it is something really life affirming and really speaks to that. I think it just, and it's also just a really simple message. It's not complicated. It's just a really simple message. I got a lot of really positive feedback from that piece. Won a prize in the festival. A lot of, I didn't see any attacks on the piece or on Chelsea related to that piece. I think that it became, like you were saying, it became something that was really affirming of her and of the piece. And it was I feel like it was really received and very supported, in the sense that, people were photographing it like crazy, and then they were uploading images. I meet people all the time that they're like, oh, I've seen that piece all over, like it was just on blogs that I might not have been aware of. I think it definitely had, you know, when we did that event with that, at the Rev Books with that guy Clark, you know, he's in contact with Chelsea, and he's working on, you know, some issues with like getting her, you know, to be able to take college courses and stuff like that and get, you know, her degree while she's incarcerated.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm hoping, you know, he knows about the piece now. You know, he was saying that at the time he was doing the trial, he had reached out to artists where he was trying to get artists to make artwork around the trial and the case and around her. And he was not getting any kind of real reception from people. So when he came across the piece, he was like, really like, wow. So I'm hoping, you know, through him, you know, it'd be great if she becomes aware of the piece. The 1600 basically refers back to the 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. So, you know, when I realized making the piece that was gonna happen, you know, it was really, the number came about because of the size and the location and, you know, trying to create it a certain amount of distance down the street. There was 50 rows and there was like 32 flags left to right. So it just all kind of, you know, was just kind of happened. I had to edit it down. The piece was too big, then I had to scale the piece back, and then it just ended up being that number. And it became kind of poetic in the sense that I could then, you know, make the piece, that 1600 reference Pennsylvania Avenue, so that I kind of put the focus, or not kind of, but it did put the focus back on, you know, the White House. And those, you know, the person in the White House, the administration, you know, just kind of connecting those things, I think are important for that piece. For this year's festival, I presented part 2, which I'm calling the Who's Edward Snowden, and it became a logical kind of choice because that story was breaking when I was doing it. I was in the middle of making the Chelsea Manning piece, and that all of a sudden everyone was like, the Edward Snowden story. And you know, it's interesting, Clark had said that a lot of journalists left the trial to go to Japan and cover the Edward Snowden story, and I almost did that. I almost thought like, oh, this is the piece. The piece isn't Chelsea Manning, the piece is Edward Snowden. It was breaking, it was fresh, and I was like, no, that maybe, you know, so in my mind I was like, maybe that's the backside of the piece. It was like a double image. The two stories are connected. And then I was like, you know, as an artist, I was like, I just have to put blinders on and just do the piece that I was setting out to do. So then when I started thinking about this year, I was like, well, why don't I just do a second part to that piece? You know, that piece was up for 2 days. You know, so I was like, there's more life to the piece, or two pieces similar. The story, there's, you know, it's still, the Snowden story is still unfolding. You know, every day it keeps, you know, we get more revelations. So it just, I was like, that's a way to keep both those stories out there, is to just create the second piece. You know, it's the same piece, same 1600 flags, and so it just, you know, keeps Chelsea and, you know, puts her back out there, and then it just continues the story. So that was kind of the thought behind creating that. So I'm involved. I mean, you know, I'm in the beginning stages of trying to create that piece. So I'm still working with the festival to secure a location for that piece. We're going to move it from the place we did last year. And now we're just trying to find a new location where, and you know, it's all about trying to improve on, as an art piece, improve on, you know, what I learned by doing the piece last year. So I'm trying to get the festival to allow me to go higher with it. Try to maybe do a couple stories in the air. You know, I think in the video that I made, in the final shots in the video are, you view the Chelsea Manning piece from the bridge, from the Manhattan Bridge, and I think it's a great distance because the piece comes together perfectly to see the photograph and to see the image of Manning. And so, you know, with trying to improve on last year, I'm really like trying to push the festival to let me go up a couple stories from the, you know, off the ground, and it's making them nervous. So that's part of the negotiation that's happening right now. Hopefully everything will come together and the piece will happen. So if it all comes together, that's going to be the end of September. I think the festival is like September 28th. So definitely keep a lookout for that. My website, kylegoen.net. I just started using Instagram to kind of document some of the stuff I'm doing. So I'm using Instagram to kind of show some of the process. So as I'm, like the Gaza piece, as we're screen printing them, you know, I'm uploading photos. You know, it's a good way to like show people some of the new stuff I'm working on, but also I can use it to be like, you know, there's an action happening on Saturday that I'm screening posters for, you know, so people didn't know that this action's happening, and, you know, and it's a good way to kind of get some exposure for the piece and for what's happening in Gaza and some of the actions that are happening around it, you know, locally. So I'm trying to, you know, so first I just started using Instagram like that during the Chelsea Manning piece and the festival. You know, that piece was up for 2 days. I had to maximize like how many people saw it, and so trying to use social media as a tool to get it out there and, you know, maximum exposure was, you know, it's kind of a learning thing, but it was cool and fun, and so just trying to kind of push that more.
Once you know, you can't unknow. And so it's like, okay, you've gone this far not knowing who Chelsea Manning is, but now there's this art piece that you're interacting with. And now who's Chelsea Manning? And so it's like, I get a lot of people
That's too often tied to the dominant Israeli narrative rather than the truth. And the truth is there's suffering on both sides, but occupation is occupation. It's wrong. The siege is a form of war criminality.